Okay, so 2 minutes is up. So once again, welcome everyone who's decided to attend today's session. So my name's Ash, I'm Director of Sales here at Checkbox. And for the moment, what I might actually do is I'll just turn the audio off, so hopefully you can hear me fine. And look, today's session is really just about speaking about HR automation with no code with Checkbox. Now, basically with the agenda for today is that we'll kind of be going through basically a couple of use cases, Checkbox itself, what we do here, and ultimately towards the end, once we've shown you a bit of the demonstration of the product and a couple of use cases that we actually we can solve for, happy to open it up for questions as well. So to get started, I'm just going to share my screen here. Now, just to start things off, what is Checkbox? Now, Checkbox is a process automation tool. Ultimately, with the platform, it gives you the ability to build your own custom workflows. And within the particular HR space, a couple of examples that I can actually speak to would be things like employment agreements, remuneration letters, change of employment, job descriptions, a number of different processes. Now, why would you want to really automate these processes? So ultimately, those types of processes usually will require a lot of manual work, where it be manual data entry. It may require multiple stakeholders being involved, where timelines get skewed, and ultimately employee engagement as well. Now, with the employment engagement element, you want to obviously try and build a crisp experience with those employees, and you want to make a streamlined approach. Now, there are plenty of solutions out there, as you can imagine, within the particular, in the industry that cater for onboarding and pre-onboarding. But ultimately, usually those particular tools or those platforms will have a standardized way of going through an onboarding workflow. The beauty with Checkbox is that you can build your own customized workflow. The platform is not determined by how we built our onboarding workflow or how we perceive how our onboarding workflow is. You have the ability to build your own customized process, which may start off in one point, but finishes in multiple different endpoints. Now, just for the purpose of some examples, so I'll just scroll down a little bit here. With the pre-onboarding and onboarding element, there's a couple of things, as I mentioned. So you've got the ability to generate job descriptions. You also have the ability to have multiple stakeholders being involved in this particular process. To give you an example, if you're going through an employment agreement for a brand new employee that's coming onto the business, they might be a senior stakeholder with a large salary, and it requires approvals where it might need to go through a direct manager, might need to go through to the CEO or the CFO, and you need them to overlook the document before it actually gets signed by the employee. Some other things like capturing information. So with onboarding, a very important part would be to actually capture the employee's details. So you can generate it within a document or push that data into other solutions, like maybe your HRIS solution, maybe your payroll system as well. And you can go as far as automating that process, so it automatically creates, let's say, an employee profile within the payroll system, as an example. Now, we have the capability of doing certain things like that because we have the ability to connect via API. And in those circumstances, we really talk to the customer around their use cases and understanding whether that integration is going to be a good fit there. There could be other processes around generating the employment agreement, requiring, once again, the approvals from multiple people, and then eventually getting it signed off by multiple stakeholders. That could be the employee, it could be the manager, it could be the CEO, and it could be payroll as well. And lastly, being able to create a simple process where you may have one starting point, and that could be just, okay, I've got a brand new employee that's starting today or starting in a couple of weeks. I want to create their information or collect their information and create their access levels as an example for different systems. And ultimately finish off in multiple endpoints where you could have different results depending on the type of role that person has, the type of salary, the type of department they might potentially be working at as well. Now, that's kind of just a quick summary. What I wanted to do after this is I wanted to sort of dive into the product and sort of show you a workflow that's in progress. So the particular demo I'm going to be showing you today is how to generate an employment agreement. Now, I would classify this as pre-onboarding. And when I say pre-onboarding, it's effectively you've interviewed a couple of people, you've got to the final round, you've found your candidate, and you've told them verbally you've got the job. Now, from there, usually there's a couple of steps. Either the hiring manager will send out the employment agreement via email, and they'll obviously have to do the hard work by placing all that information in for the candidate within that employment agreement and sending it out. Now, there are some businesses that take a couple of hours to do. They usually have a template and they have to slot in that dynamic information manually, while other documents might be more standardized where you don't really need that process automation. Now, in this particular example, I'll be going through and starting off the process by clicking on Start. Now, the first point of this particular process is to basically specify what type of agreement this is. So in this particular example, I'll be choosing permanent employment agreement. However, I do have other options here, such as individual independence contract agreement and entity independent contract agreement. Now, I have the ability with Checkbox to be able to put in some descriptions based on the question or the multi option that I've chosen. So if I choose entity, you'll be able to see that information here. However, if I choose permanent, I'll be able to see a different message, just indicating what type of agreement I'm actually choosing. You could treat it as tooltips for the business user. Now, once I click on next, I'll get to the stage where I need to actually fill out some information. So from here, I'll be popping in some candidate information. So I'll place in my information for the meantime. So my email address, my contact number, first name, and last name. Now, at this stage of the process, I've got kind of like a split. So there's two things that could happen by me answering this particular question. One is that if I already know what the employee's address details are, I could actually click on yes here and fill that information out. Now, in this actual circumstance, which is very realistic, where I actually don't know the candidate's address details just yet, I can choose the option no. And I can also ask another question, which is, what is the preferred start date for that particular candidate? So in that circumstance, I would like to ask them when they would like to start their first day. And whenever I'm ready, I can click on next. Now, the next step from here is that Checkbox is actually going to send an email to the candidate, inviting them to jump into the Checkbox workflow to start filling out information. Now, the email notification is that you actually have the ability to customize this email to send it to the employee. Now, this general template or this static email should do the trick. But let's say you wanted to personalize it a little bit and kind of mention, hey, really excited to have you on board. Maybe mention something that you guys spoke about during the interview process, just to make it a little bit personalized. And for you to be able to do that, it's just a matter of actually specifying that by saying yes and filling out that information. Now, in this circumstance, I'll choose no and click on next. And basically the next step for me is it'll give me a transcript page where it's going to give me a summary of all the information that I've placed in so far. Now, when I do click on submit, effectively what the checkbox is telling me now is that this workflow has been sent to the candidate And in this particular example, I'll be pretending to be the business user and the candidate at the same time. So they would have received an email with a link. They click on that link, and the next page they will be able to see is this page. Now, as I mentioned, one of the tick boxes of questions was, do you have a preference on a start date? So that's why this particular question has popped up. If I said, no, I want to set up the start date, this question won't be here for the employee or the new candidate. So in this circumstance, I'll pop in November 1st. I'll start placing in some address details. And whenever I'm ready, I can click on next to the job offer. Now, because that's pretty much the employee or the candidate's role at that stage is just to fill out that information. Once I do click on submit, this will get sent back to the business user. So the person who's effectively started the process, which is me, the business user, maybe the HR manager, it'll redirect me to this particular page. Now, a couple of things I can go from here is that with the job offer and the questions below, as you can see, I've got multiple different options. I'll choose full-time employment in this particular circumstance. However, if I chose casual, as you can see, there's a base salary option here. If I choose casual, you'll be able to see that change into base daily rate. So in the circumstance where they're a casual, you can place in their hourly rate here. Now, for the full-time candidate, next step is job offer letter date. So effectively, I do want to send it out today. So I'll leave it at this date, and I can choose the job title. Now, the job title makes a big difference to this document because it actually pre-fills some dynamic information based on the role that they're actually doing. So if I do click on software engineer, you'll actually be able to see a job description with their actual job. And they may have actually seen this type of information in their job description initially, obviously spoke about it, but we want this to be generated within the document. Now, for this particular example, I'm going to choose sales executive. And as you can see, some of that information has changed. I'll place in a base salary. And a signing bonus as well. So let's pop in 20K. Now, because this is a salesperson, I also have the ability to attach an additional document that I want that person to sign and generate, which is the sales commission scheme, because this person is a salesperson. Now, when I do click on next here, I'll be able to go, it redirects me to another page, which is the sales commission plan, where I can actually customly set up their commission structure. Now, from here, because let's say this person's a senior role, their target agreed upon is $100,000. On target commission percentage, because this person's, let's say, mid-level to senior, I'm going to place it as 8%. And as you can see, that's changed. The calculations are already being done for you. And pretty much the last percentage will be just above quota commission as well. So I'll pop in 12%. Now, whenever I'm ready, I can click on next, and this will redirect me to a new page. It will take a little bit of time, but as you can see, the first thing will pop up will be my employment agreement. Now, with the employment agreement, as you can see, there are some highlighted information here that effectively tell me the dynamic information that's been entered into this particular document. Now, my address details, the employee name, the title. We've also got other information like the type of role, the full-time employment, the start date, and multiple other different things as well. Now, with the document generation piece, effectively, when capturing this information, you can effectively place in any information into this document. A great example is that, let's say you've got somebody on a visa and they've got certain limitations around how many hours they can potentially work per week. Let's say 20 hours per week is the maximum they can work. You can actually, when specifying that person is a part-time, a clause will be entered in, basically specifying that they can only work max 20 hours per week because they're part-time, and any of the conditions that need to be entered in within this document. And as you can see, they've just been highlighted as well, if there is anything that needs to be entered. Now, if I scroll down at the bottom, also another thing to highlight is that my superannuation has already been calculated and entered in to the remuneration package as well. Generally speaking, due to the fact that superannuation is quite static. And just lastly, at the bottom is just the signatory information. So sign date, full name, and sign here. Now, if I go to the next page, this will actually show me the sales commission plan. So due to the fact that I actually ticked on sales commission plan and actually filled out that information, I'll get a secondary form or a secondary document that highlights the commission plan that this person's going to be on, the information that I filled out as well. So variable component around their commission, 8%, which or 100K, which is 8K, their quota, their actual targets or their percentages that they can earn, and just certain things like the employment agreement and where they need to sign as well. Now, once I've done that, it'll be a matter of clicking on next. Now I have let's say two different endpoints I can end up with at the end of this particular workflow. I can either send this particular or these documents to DocuSign, where it'll actually already be mapped and sent out to the appropriate parties for signatory, or I can actually get this to be sent out to me via email where I can download it and send it via email. In this circumstance, I'll be actually clicking on DocuSign. And what I will do is I'm just going to make sure my email is ready. Yep. So I'll click on DocuSign here. And effectively what will happen from here is that I as just like the business user, the employee will receive a couple of emails, most likely 3. One will be around one of the employment agreements from DocuSign. The other one will be around the commission plan, and one will be a summary of the fact that they've actually just been offered a full-time position. So what I will do is I'm just going to jump into my email and I'll bring up the screen here to show you what the DocuSign integration looks like. So as you can imagine, if you guys have had some experience with DocuSign, I'll be able to open that link up, click on agree to electronic signature. Now, for demo purposes, as you can imagine, these highlights are there, but they won't be there when you actually send this out. But when I'm ready, I can click on start. It'll pop me to my signatory information. Now I can map this field wherever I need to and adopt the signature. And once I'm done, this can be sent back to Checkbox. It could be sent to the employee, the business user, multiple different pathways. Now, from that step, there's another process that can be done as well. So as you can see, nearly done. DocuSign has been sent to the employee. Once you've obviously got confirmation that the DocuSign has been signed from both parties, I can actually click on next here. And in this circumstance, my onboarding process generally would finish here, or my pre-onboarding process would finish here, where I can actually go, okay, welcome to the Checkbox family. As a part of your onboarding, you need to fill out a TFN form, superannuation form, and maybe we need to collect some bank details as well. So what we've done in this particular workflow is we've attached those particular documents to this workflow that employee can actually get access to, fill that out, and they can actually jump into Checkbox again, upload that document, which you'll be able to actually receive. Now, during that onboarding process, as you can imagine, onboarding is probably a little bit longer than that. Once that type of information is populated and filled out, you can continue on with this workflow by building other things like, let's say, after you've captured all the information, you also need to get the employee, or let's say get your IT team to create all the brand new employees' access levels, like assign them a computer, set that up, set them logins, get an email ready for them, etc. So you can actually get Checkbox to send an email to your IT team, create some SLAs around it, maybe 24 hours or 36 hours to have a timeline to get that all created and built, and sent out to the employee. And kind of once they've completed their side, when they do click on next, that might go to another team, which might be payroll. And payroll their next steps might be, okay, I have to create the employee's details. I've received the bank details, superannuation, and TFN information from Checkbox already. So they have all the information they need to get started on their particular task. And eventually towards the end, you might have a particular, let's say, onboarding package where you might want to schedule a follow-up meeting with your brand new employee to start, where they might be going through some onboarding processes when they actually first start on their particular day. So the reason why I kind of went through that process as well towards the end is because you can actually build all of that within Checkbox. And as I mentioned, it is fully customizable. Now, that is the first workflow, or probably one of our more in-depth workflows. That is a very realistic scenario in a lot of businesses. What I want to show you next is the back end. So obviously you've seen what the front end looks like, what it actually looks like within Checkbox. However, how did we actually build this? What is the no-code aspect of Checkbox? So me jumping into this page. Now, this particular page we call the studio, which is effectively the back end of Checkbox. So what it actually looks like from the back end, how it's actually built, what are the building blocks, and effectively what the workflow looks like. Now, if I scroll slightly back here, you'll actually be able to see a lot of processes, a lot of building blocks that have effectively gone in the way to build that particular workflow. Now, this might look very complicated in the first initial look of it, but it is actually a pretty okay example, in my opinion, around how complex Checkbox can actually build in regards to the workflows. So in this particular circumstance, just to show you the building blocks in the initial stages, we've obviously got a start point where a person clicks on the link to jump into the application, and they obviously want to go and progress to the next steps. I've got a couple of building blocks here that will capture information from that particular candidate or business unit user when they're actually starting this process. And I'll actually just show you this agreement type form. So this was one of the first pages that we've actually filled out, which was what type of agreement is this? Permanent, individual, or entity. So in that circumstance, we've already built that in. You'll be able to see the parameters in there as well. And those are kind of the initial building blocks to capture information, to get engagement around multiple stakeholders, and eventually get to the point to the end where you've got an employment agreement that's signed off. Now, the no-code element of Checkbox is that effectively Checkbox is drag and drop. So as you can see, we've got a bunch of building blocks on the left-hand side. A couple of things like forms, yes or no statements or blocks, lists, tables. Comps are more around capturing information and calculations as well. You can send emails. If you've got some experience around JavaScript, you can sort of build some JavaScript blocks and take it Checkbox to the next level. You can build your own databases as well. E-signatures, so we have integrations already with DocuSign and Adobe Sign. So if you use either one of those, we've already got a built-in integration with both. However, if you're using another type of e-signature platform, as long as it's got an open API, we have the ability to integrate with them. And just below over here, we've got a couple of other workflow sequences around parallel sequence. Now, these blocks are more so around, let's say you've got an approval workflow where you've generated the document, you've gotten towards the end, you've generated the document, but before anything, you actually want the email, or let's say the employment agreement, to be looked at with the CFO and the hiring manager at the same time. That's where you would set up a parallel workflow where you'll be able to actually get both blocks together and say, send an email to both parties. We need to get their approvals before we progress any further. Now, with Checkbox's ability, and due to the fact that it is no code, we do have certain training certifications that new customers or people that are actually trialing out Checkbox to see whether it's a good fit can actually go through and get an experience of what Checkbox is like, how easy it is to adapt. But the biggest benefit, in my opinion, would be the fact that as a citizen developer, as a, let's say source of knowledge in your team, this platform will give you the ability to make changes, create new workflows and processes with obviously the right training very quickly, and be able to adapt and maintain these workflows at a very rapid rate. Now, when it comes to technology like this, ultimately, what generally tends to happen is that you would need to actually go to your IT team. They would need to make changes. They would need to add certain things. And because IT is generally never free, they're always got certain things that are going on. Your priority may not be their priority. So in that circumstance, that's where Checkbox really shines, because you have the ability to make changes within hours, within minutes, instead of you having to wait days on weeks or on months. So that's kind of where the studio really comes into play, is that it is user-friendly, it is drag and drop. And with some training, we've got 3 levels of training. You've got designer, expert, and master, where you can kind of go through and within a span of a couple of weeks. Some courses are much, much shorter, but I believe the designer course is a couple of hours, and you can basically get the building blocks and really understand what Checkbox is really about. Now, that's kind of a quick summary of the demonstration around the employment agreement and the studio. One example that I'd love to show you as well would be the employment, or let's say remuneration letter. So this is another workflow we've actually built in that's very simple, very popular as well, in a sense that a lot of businesses have to go through this particular process. Now, in this particular process, I'll click on start here. Now, I've got some information pre-filled for us already, so I don't have to fill that out again, but just to explain, this is a remuneration letter generator. So effectively, this will be sent out to any employee that has had a salary change. Now, I do actually have other options that I can choose from. So employment terms, bonus structures, resignation, termination. However, in this circumstance, I'll choose salary review. I've popped in some of my candidate information here. And at the bottom here is some salary details. So current salary is 90K, and that person has received a 10K pay rise, and that'll be the new change. So I want to create a remuneration letter for this particular example. So whenever I'm ready, I can click on next. It'll show me a transcript. And as you'll be able to see in a second, it'll have the remuneration letter, which has got all my information here. So my details, remuneration review, 10K increase, and the salary from what it was previously to what it is now. Now, this particular circumstance, let's say you've got a business that is going through or requires to generate multiple remuneration letters at the same time. So let's say bulk, you do actually have the ability to create a custom workflow that can actually be built solely for the focus or solely for the purpose of creating bulk letters. Now, those letters could be customized and could be really anything, but if you have the urgent need to generate these letters constantly and in bulk, you have the ability to actually have an Excel spreadsheet, have those appropriate details in the fields already, and Checkbox will give you the ability to upload that file and bulk generate all these letters and actually send them out to the appropriate parties as well, if that's what you want to do. So I figured I'd show you that example as well, because it is quite common. It is something that a lot of businesses actually go through, and they end up saving a lot of time having an application solely built for this that they use maybe once a year, because that's generally the bulk of the work. You're doing it once a year, but they have to do 100. They have to do it 100 times or 1,000 times. Now, that's pretty much a quick summary of that. Now, what I'll do is I'll just bring my slide deck back and kind of just go through a couple of other examples. So with Checkbox, we also have other use cases that we've solved for with a multitude amount of customers of ours in the past and currently. As I mentioned, remuneration letters. We also do enhancement or performance reviews within the Checkbox platform. Once again, it is just a process around organizing multiple stakeholders to talk to each other and go through certain information, and of course, capture and store that information. We've got customers that also use self-service FAQs where, let's say you're a HR department and you've got, let's say 50 common questions that you generally tend to ask by employees or business users within the organization. They might send you a Slack or a Teams message, might send you an email, and your email's getting cluttered a lot. So in that circumstance, you can create a FAQ application, which solely for the purpose is to basically answer common questions. And if they are very complicated questions where they are answered by multiple different factors, that's where the workflows really come into play, where you can actually put those questions in and that'll guide them into the direct path. I always like to use the example, choose your own journey type experience. And lastly, over here, another process that we found very common is change of employment process, which is, let's say you're large enterprise organization, you've got employees that are constantly moving departments, constantly moving states, and you have to change the employment agreement every single time. That's where you can create a change of employment process, where instead of you having to manually create those documents and create, basically go through that process internally, you can build that process within Checkbox to automate that and make that a very quick process altogether. Now, hopefully that was a good summary of the HR processes within Checkbox and how we can potentially help you. From my side, I guess what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to open it up to questions. And with the questions, look, feel free to sort of throw out those questions to me. I'll give you guys 5 minutes or so. And from here as well, I'll just activate a poll just around basically if you wanted to continue on with the conversation as well. But thank you for your time, guys. Please feel free to throw out those questions. I'll give it about 5 minutes or so. Thank you. And sorry, I did have one person that had a question just around sign requests. So does it have an integration to sign requests? So at the moment we don't, but once again, if sign request actually has an open API, we actually do have the ability to integrate with that platform. And we usually do it on a customer to customer basis. If you do reach out and we have a conversation, we can kind of tell you, okay, this is how much work it's going to involve to actually build that. Okay, I've got another question as well. Do we have the option to customize the currency and the job title and description? Yes, you do. So within the actual platform itself, those fields that were in the actual workflow and let's say we're using the employment agreement as an example, everything is customized. So we have just built that workflow on the basis of what our knowledge is around those employment agreements, what are generally dynamic information. So in your particular question around customizing currency, job title, and description, those are all dynamic information. So effectively what we would do is the first couple of steps would be around capturing those questions. And then eventually, once you've got that information, you generate that within the template or within your actual document itself. Hopefully that answers your question. Now, I've got another question. Where do you think Checkbox should sit around the HR tech stack? Now, great question. I usually would think, and usually when I'm talking to customers, I think that Checkbox sort of sits in the pre-onboarding to onboarding part. So not workforce management, not payroll, not HRIS, not, or let's say the HRS space is a nice space that we fill in those gaps. Recruitment, probably after recruitment, would probably be where we sit, because once you've had a bunch of candidates jump in and have interviews, once you're ready to actually choose that person and get them on board and have that verbal offer, that's where you're going to need to generate that document around that official offer to get them signed off, and eventually go through that onboarding process of capturing information, talking to multiple stakeholders, and eventually going through and onboarding that person successfully. hopefully that answers your question. Please, if there's anything else, feel free to, or if you want me to elaborate on these questions as well, please let me know. Okay, so look, looks like there's no more questions. So look, thank you guys so much for joining the webinar. Ultimately, with the poll, if you could answer that, if you're interested in a conversation, if you'd like to find out more, we're more than welcome to reach out. Ultimately, I'll probably shoot you guys an email, give you guys a buzz just to see what you guys thought, get some feedback. And if you really do want to find out more, usually what the process tends to be is that we're happy to do a bespoke demo or even go through a couple of more in-depth use cases that are more related to your particular scenario and kind of understand whether Checkbox is going to be a right fit for you. But once again, thank you so much, everyone. It was a pleasure, and hopefully I get to see you guys pretty soon. Thanks a lot. Have a great day. Cheers. Bye.